Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the Rules of Engagement. As always, I'll be your host, Nick axslav ranish, as we explore Starcraft 2 tactics and strategies in this show. The show will air every day of the week at 7 p.m. Eastern. Each day of the week will have a unique theme. Let's take a look at a couple of those themes right now. Every Monday, it's going to be today, the start of the week, we start out with Talking Tactics. So we'll take a look at professional level games, analyze the tactics they use, and talk about how you can use those tactics at home to improve your play. Every Tuesday is going to be Developing Fundamentals. That's where we take a look at the core skill sets and building blocks that are put together to make a StarCraft 2 player, how you can develop those skill sets, and how you basically approach playing the game of competitive StarCraft 2. Wednesday is Mechanics of the Bizarre. That's where we take a look at pro games, but unlike Monday, we're taking a look at games a little bit crazy, where we do some weird or bizarre strategies that you might not see every day. Thursday is Community Critique. That's your chance to have your replays at home looked over. Go to majorleaguegaming.com/replays, send me a replay, and I'll take a look at it on Thursday, the Community Critique. Friday, it's going to be a day of self-reflection. So we'll take a look at my own replays, analyze the strategies I use, the mistakes I made, some of the techniques that I use to help me compete against players with, much better hand-eye coordination and faster hand speed, basically. All these shows air at 7 p.m. Eastern each day of the week. Let's take a look at our topics for today, which is going to be Talking Tactics. We're going to start out with a Void Ray Colossi composition in PvZ with Shu versus Sen, some great players here. Then we're going to talk about defending aggression in Zerg versus Terran, in Demaga versus Pult, and then how to make a comeback in Terran versus Zerg with the same replay, again, Demaga versus Pult, but this time via Pult's perspective. We're going to finish the show off with the question and answer period. Throughout this show or earlier in the day, whenever you want, tweet any question to me at axslav if it's about strategy, if it's about what I do in the morning, what I ate for breakfast, whatever. If it's about anything StarCraft or even non-StarCraft related, go ahead, tweet at me at axslav. But for now, let's jump into our first replay, Void Ray Colossi, Shu versus Sen. First, we'll take a look at some different ways to pressure the Zerg early. Then we'll take a look at how you can defend a third base against Zerg aggression. Then we'll do some strengths and weaknesses of the Void Ray Colossi composition. So let's jump into this replay and look at exactly what Shu kind of has right now, right? So his first star is going to be talking about different types of pressure. So as you can see here, he's got 4 gateways. He adds in 3 more. And he's got a mothership core that's been crossing the map. And so what he's going to do is he's going to do that, is the Forge Expo into 4 gate pressure. And he's going to use this proxy paladin to warp in zealots and start putting pressure on his opponent. The one important thing to notice is that while he's doing this, he's also building a Stargate transition. Stargate transition back at home. Because he's not making 6, 7, 8 gateways, he has extra money to play with. So this isn't the most committed gateway tack you can do. But the whole idea of this gateway tack is that you try to kill queens. Your standard 4-gate, let's actually just pause it here, or play it from here. Your standard 4-gate pressure is fairly easily stopped by Zerg players. They can just build roaches and they'll stop it, and it'll take some damage, but it won't do critical damage. But the key thing here is that when you add in that mothership into it, it allows for increased damage potential because you don't have to beat all these roaches that have popped out, right? All you have to do is damage the queens, and you notice when he killed that first queen, this mothership kill has already gone 4 kills off of mostly drones. And in fact, it gets 1 more queen kill here, and then it has more time to go kill drones. So you don't have to beat the entire ground army. If you can force the queens back, you can go ahead and get several drone kills, delay mining, do some more serious damage than you could before without having the extra mothership core to help you out. So the next thing I'm going to transition to is the Stargate play, and this all coincides, right? I mean, the reason you're going Stargate is because you're all putting pressure on their anti-air defenses. You throw gateway pressure at them early. That causes your opponent to have to invest in a lot of roaches. And they're thinking about gateway pressure, which means they're less likely to worry about air. If you get a couple queen kills early, it's even greater because then you can surprise them with your Stargate-based play. Now, unfortunately for him in this game, actually if we will rewind this just a little bit so you can see, the Stargate catches Zerg by surprise. You can often just straight out win the game if they're not ready for it. Do serious damage. But in this game, unfortunately, an Overlord spotted this Stargate. Some great scouting by Sen, of course, world-class player from Taiwan. Able to shut that down. And so, but it's still not that bad. Because even if your Stargates get scouted early, you can still get the overworld kills and get sky information by using those Phoenix. So instead of waiting for a whole bunch of air units and then moving out, as we watch this replay, we're going to see that he's just going to move out with the 2 Phoenixes he has and try to clear overlords from the map. And then once he's done killing all the overlords, he can then scout his opponent and get a lot more valuable information on. So all that information is going to tell him what threats do I need to be worried about. Is my opponent going muteless? Is he going infestors? Can I take this third early, or should I be a little bit afraid? He can tell his opponent made some roaches, but there's not a muteless transition, so he doesn't need to worry about blink or more Phoenixes. He just has to worry about the frontal assault when he's taking his third base. So next thing we're going to talk about is how to defend this third base, because it looks really frail, right? You spent the money on the pressure. You spent the money on the Phoenixes. Meanwhile, your opponent has this giant army, right? And all he has is what looks like a fairly scrappy small army for defense, because he spent so much money, like I said, on the pressure, than even on a Nexus. I mean, you can look at, he's done a great job of spending his money, and he's even done a great job maintaining roughly even economy with his opponent. But unfortunately, it's just because of the way the larva mechanic works versus it takes you a little while to get your production to gear, he's got less units for now. So the tricky part's defending the third base. Now, what you notice here is that he's got a lot of cool abilities. So the sentries have force fields. The Mothership Core has time warp. If you combine these abilities, you can defend against a much superior force by using them to zone out. Look at this, zoning out all these units here. And so he can have his whole army fight a small chunk of army right there. Unfortunately, this army backs up, and then he's stuck with a choice, right? Let's jump into the, oops, sorry. Wrong screen there. There we go. So if we jump into screen here, as soon as this army right here backs up, he's stuck with a choice, right? He could either try to pursue it at an angle here and then attack it here. And the reason why I say he should go over at this sideways angle here is because if he tries to go straight for the army, he'll be very vulnerable to fire from the units on the other side. So you would have to work around him. The danger of trying to do that to make sure you get those unit kills when you section off their army is that if these force fields go away, right, all of a sudden the whole Zerg army can just pile in, and they can kind of just come up through here and catch you from the flank, right? So what you really want to do when you're playing this is, instead of chasing the guys, use the force fields and you just stay back. You know, you got a couple kills here, right? We can see it's actually, when I tab back in, I should just do it right now. Let's bring up that units lost tab. You can see he's already got some decent kills, but more importantly, he's buying time. If you look at unit production, look at this guy, this Colossi guy right there. Very, very, very useful if you can buy enough time to get that guy out. So instead of doing that craziness where he tries to run up here, let's not do that. Let's just stay defensive and just stay back and basically this zone. Because as long as you stay back here, all of a sudden you've got this great concave basically against this small line here. So you've got a much superior concave position, even though you don't get those free kills that you might have wanted to get by getting the jump on that inferior force. So we'll get back in the game and see how we can do this, but we can see here that the combination of those force fields, and then he also has a time warp ability he can use whenever he needs to. Maybe one right there right now. Oh, using more force fields. Okay, so using both. But what he can do is he can segment off all these units where he can engage the smaller force. And not only does it allow him to fight a small section of the army at a time, but it also allows him to buy time to get that extra powerful Colossus into the action, the Void Ray into the action. And then once he has all those bad boys in action, he can absolutely evaporate his Zerg army and hold the attack pretty well there. So that's all it takes to defend your third. Just great use of force fields, time warp, use those abilities to the maximum to isolate a small army and defend a numerically superior force. Now from here on out, what he's going to do is he knows that his opponent is on Lair Tech because of all that aggression. In fact, what he wants to do is he wants to try to confirm it, but he can see all the units coming down the middle. If they're still making Roach Hydra, guess what? Roach Hydra means they're not teching. So you still can assume they're not taking past Lair. And what's really strong against Lair Tech play is the Void Ray Colossi composition. And the reason why this composition is so strong against Lair Tech is because the only thing Colossi are weak to that Zerg has on Lair Tech is Corruptors. But Void Rays are very good against Corruptors. They're much better they're much better at killing Corruptors than Stalkers are. So if you're worried about, getting rid of those Corruptors fast before they kill your Colossi, Void Rays are the way to go. Colossi Void Ray is very, very, very good against any Lair Tech Zerg composition. What can be a problem is against a Hive Tech composition. And the reason why the Hive Tech can be a problem is because if you're building Void Rays and Colossi, all of a sudden you're not going to have... Let's actually pause it here and me talk. Before we get into this battle, let me talk about that composition a bit. And then we'll talk about why it's so strong there. So, if they're going Hive Tech, the Void Ray Colossi, you're not going to have the extra gas, because Void Rays are very gas-intensive, Colossi are gas-intensive. So you won't really be able to have easy access to High Templar. And you won't have easy access to like a mothership either. So those two things combined make you much weaker versus like Broodlords and Infestors. And the reason why is because you need Templar to help with feedbacks and storms. And then, of course, you need a mothership to get that Vortex in. It's pretty hard to beat a Infestor Broodlord competition because the Broodlords can push your Colossi back. The Voiders try to get in range to take out those Broodlords. You got Fungals and then Infested Terrans behind the Brooding protection line. So you really don't want to deal with a Hive Tech army like this, at least until you get a chance to add in that Mothership and the Storm, which you can do later on. But they're going heavy Lair Tech. It's a great composition. And let's check out how it does against this army right here. Jump back into the game. And we can see that, you know, this army... Sen is a world-class player, so he's trying to get this concave where he can hit from multiple angles. But as long as you keep your army compact, it's so much dense. Right? It looks like it's so much smaller than this, but if you look at the army value, it's actually almost identical. In fact, it's like 500 minerals less, but then 200 gas more. And then as soon as these two units jump out, it's going to be significantly larger. So right now, it's roughly the same size, but it's only going to get bigger, whereas the Zerg army cannot get much bigger, and it has a really, really, really hard time engaging it. Eventually, there's going to come time to an engagement, and the Zerg would rather have to be sooner than later, because as I mentioned, without Hive Tech, Zerg really, really struggles with this composition. So you fast forward here, the Zerg is trying to find engagement, but anytime he engages, look at that. You can use a Time Warp, you can use the Force Fields. Yeah, your Mothership Core is probably going to die, but you know what? It's pretty cheap. In fact, actually gets away there. The whole army just gets absolutely obliterated there. Sure, you eventually lose all your Void Rays, but by the time you lost the Void Rays, they've lost the entire ground army. If the Corruptors instead focused the Colossi, then they might have gotten 1 or 2 Colossi, but there would be 4 Void Rays left over, and you would still have lost the entire ground army by the time he kills it. So, very, very, very strong anti-layer composition. I mean, from here on out, that type of army difference, you can just push across the map, get the easy win, and take down the match convincingly. So, the cool things to take out of this game were, one, like the harassment combination. It was all designed to try to set up a lot of damage with the airplay. First, using the Zealots to protect the Mothership Core from the Queens. Then, once you killed a couple of Queens, followed up with that airplay. Unfortunately, the airplay was scouted, so it couldn't do much damage, as Sen was totally prepared. But you can still use it to get great scouting information on your opponent. And if you know your opponent is going lair heavy, focus on that Void Ray Colossi composition, or even just Colossi Blink Stalkers. But in Heart of the Swarm, the Void Rays actually add a lot to that composition because they're so powerful against Corruptors. Get that composition, play defensively. Once you build up your ball, if they're not quite Hive Tech, feel free to move out, push forward, and win the game. Wraps up for this segment about Void Ray Colossi competition against Zerg. Take a short break and be back with our Zerg segment on how to deal with early Terran aggression in Zerg vs. Terran.